What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Scott and welcome to the highly anticipated part 7 of 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6. Now, if you've been watching this series for a while now, you'd know that there's no connectivity between each episode, so you can jump right in at any point. In fact, if you're brand new to the channel, you can begin by enjoying this very video right now. What you may not know if you're brand new is that this video is being made because the future of an enjoyable Elder Scrolls 6 depends on it. There are threats, you see. Threats that would bring a grown man to his knees. Threats that would slay dragons if spoken, even by the tongue of non-dragonborn. Tonberry Queen, for example, said, "Part 7 or I'll build a huge shrine to Talos in your front yard and give the Thalmor your address." Wolf Woods threatened, if you don't make a part 7, dark elf heads will look like blueberries again. And Skulltech Stuff prophesied that Nazim will become a Daedric prince and a generic Skyrim guard will have conquered Tamriel if we don't make part 7. It's all very scary stuff, and as usual, we encourage some more positive incentives like that given by Ro Jaws, who told us we would get a house in the Cloud District and all the stolen sweet rolls we can eat. We've had those Bethesda sweet rolls before, and we can tell you that they're pretty good, but only if they're fresh. So we're pretty keen for more. Also, you guys are obsessed with Nazim and the Cloud District. I swear you almost love him more than you hate him. Anyways, the relentless threats go on and on. Part 7, or Michael Bay is the director of the Elder Scrolls 6, and Battlefront 2 is the primary influence. By mendicant biased. Part 7, or the Elder Scrolls 6 is only going to use one voice actor for the entire game, and they'll sound like the adoring fan from the Elder Scrolls 4, by William Korb. And most terrifyingly, Part 7 or you'll be trapped in Blackreach looking for Crimson Nirnroot until the Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. Fitting by Mad One. Without a doubt, this has earned you a Part 7, and I highly encourage you to head to the comments section to motivate us to make a Part 8. Also, let us know your thoughts on us doing a FudgeMuppet Q&A sometime soon, and also some separate Elder Scrolls 6 discussion videos. Alright, let's cut straight to desire number 1. Holidays. In Elder Scrolls 6, we want things to be a little bit more festive. The desire for more holidays in the game was actually commented by a viewer named Comprehensive Cat, and we agree. You see, what's perfect about this desire is that we're all assuming based on the trailer that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be set in either Hammerfell, High Rock, or both, and in Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, which was set in the Iliac Bay region, involving parts of both of these provinces, we could actually learn a lot of lore about holidays. So many holidays, special occasions or festivals that have been documented in the lore are specifically for Breton and Redguard culture. How perfect is that? In Elder Scrolls 6, I think it would really add to the depth of the world if these holidays were brought to life. For example, the Redguards have an equivalent of New Year's called Baranth Do. However, this isn't celebrated on the first day of every year, it's actually carried out on the 18th of Evening Star, which is the 12th and final month of the year. Imagine you're out roaming the deserts and some traveling merchants wishes you a happy new year in the most Redguard way possible. You'd think they're crazy based on the time of the year, you'd think he's 2 or so weeks early. Anyways, heading into Sentinel for the 20th time, things are very visibly different. You see the citizens out on the streets celebrating with various traditional Redguard colours, banners and decorations. Children would be lining up to play festival games, and perhaps there would be an arena set up where Redguard warriors fought it out with wooden swords. There would be special unique treats being sold by vendors who are normally just citizens but always set up shop for a bit of fun each year at this time, and overall the vibe would just be very different and fun compared to what the city is normally like. A holiday like this would be celebrated all over Hammerfell, but other festivals could exist that are much more specific, and you'd only hear of them if you're in the right place at the exact right date of the year. So not only would this make the world feel more alive and unpredictable, it would also make these festivals feel more special to stumble across. If you could find a lore book with all the holidays in it, it would also be cool because then you could track them all down and show up intentionally if you were so inclined. For example, if you happen to be adventuring around the barony of Glenumbria Moors, which is a coastal region in the province of High Rock, then there's actually a few holidays you may come across. One of these is the Moon Festival, celebrated on the 8th of Sun's Dusk, the 11th month of the year, and this date marks the time of year where the nights began to grow longer. Even though the worship of the moon Secunda is not popular in High Rock, it is said that this celebration is still performed in Secunda's honor. It would be a time of feasting and merriment, and everyone, including yourself, can participate if you're there at the time. There is also said to be a specific festival to the Alakir Desert held on the 26th of First Seed, known as the Festival of Blades. Supposedly, the people of of the Alakir Desert celebrate the victory of the first Redguard triumph over a race of giant goblins, an event of which scholars are very skeptical. Anyways, things like this would be sensational to come across in your travels. Holidays are good because A, they add more lore into the game, B, they make the world feel more dynamic and alive, and C, they keep you guessing and spice things up. It provides the same benefits as a random occurrence, even though this isn't actually random, while also adding more depth to a culture of a race, faction, or specific area. One final point is to make that these special days don't have to be celebrations. Some can be superstitions. For example, as Comprehensive Cat commented, there's the Day of Shame on the 20th of Rain's Hand. On this day, it is said that all along the seaside of Hammerfell, people don't leave their houses in fear of running into the Crimson Ship, a vessel said to return on this day, a day in which the victims of the Nahartan flu who were refused refuge hundreds of years ago come back. Our second desire for Elder Scrolls 6 featured in this video is some kind of disposition system, most likely a hidden one. So if you've been watching our Elder Scrolls Things We Want videos so far, you'll know that we like the idea of implementing a reputation system similar to that which is used in Fallout New Vegas, where you have a certain level of fame or infamy with various towns, cities, gods, very important people, all the factions, and so on. Well, implementing a disposition system is like having a reputation system only for individual people. And obviously, unlike the reputation system we wanted, we don't need a menu section for all the individual NPCs in the game. That would be way too intense. Although, like we said, if there was a really significant individual like a king, then they can have your reputation with them shown in the reputation menu. Anyways, a disposition system would influence how each NPC in the world treats you, and unlike reputation, it's not necessarily based on what you've done for them, and it can also change depending on the context. Think of how disposition worked in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. In this game, you could see the disposition someone had towards you by playing the Speechcraft minigame, and it was a number out of 100. The higher the number was, the happier this person was to see you, the more they'd be willing to tell you things, and the more pleasant they'd act towards you. Obviously, the lower the number, the more these things would work in the opposite way. In Skyrim, there was a kind of disposition too, but it was more just if you did a quest for someone, they'd like you and sometimes give you a piece of food and call you a friend. What I want for a disposition system is one that works more like Oblivion's, in a sense of there being a number out of 100, but I want it to be way more complex. We don't need to be able to see what the number is, and obviously we don't need that silly Speechcraft minigame wheel brought back at all. So disposition is great because it immerses you more in the game world by making it feel like your actions and who you are affect how you are treated. It fleshes out the NPCs more based on the fact that they treat you in varying ways, and makes you consider how your actions in the world will impact how people view you. So how would disposition work? Well, one easy way to add complexity is to simply increase the amount of things that factor into how someone feels about you. For example, have you helped or harmed this person individually, but also have you influenced for better or worse the community or faction that they are strongly aligned to? Maybe you're on really good terms with the king, but this person hates royalty and by extension isn't too fond of you anymore. What gender are you? Perhaps some citizens treat males and females differently. You could meet a woman who has just been betrayed by her husband and she'll simply trust you more because you are also a female and she feels you might relate to her struggle. What race are you? Maybe you're a high elf, and no matter how much questing you do and how much you've saved the world and become a mighty hero and a good deed doer, there will be a dark elf citizen who simply hates you. He will hate you because you're a high elf and there's nothing you can do about it. Perhaps you're the Archmage of the Mages Guild and therefore are treated better when you walk into a random store in a city, as the shopkeeper practices spellcasting as a hobby. He could comment on how he's a big fan and his prices would be noticeably better. All in all, this gives you a more unique experience in each playthrough and makes the world feel real. Some people just won't like you for who you are and the things you've done just because they disagree with your decisions or are ideologically opposed to you. The only thing we'd have to do is make sure you don't get locked out of any main quests because of it. That said, I think it would be really cool, only on a micro scale because otherwise it'd feel restrictive, if there were instances where the only way you could discover a certain quest with someone is if your disposition is high enough. For example, imagine an Argonian who has travelled all the way from Blackmarsh to Hammerfell. He's a beggar on the street, and you never know he's a quest giver unless you're an Argonian, and then he tells you that he knows of a pirate ship filled with loot that sunk off the shores of the province. He wanted to go searching for himself, but he didn't think he'd be capable of fending off any dangers. You, on the other hand, look capable, and you're an Argonian who can also breathe underwater, like him. You've got the utility he needs, and he trusts you just because you're an Argonian. Quest examples like this would be far and few between, but still a neat little addition to incentivize replayability. Besides people treating you different based on what you've done for them, what your skill set is, what your reputation is with other groups, and who you are on a biological level, there are other things to consider as well. For example, disposition can change depending on how you present yourself in a specific environment. So if you walk into the king's castle and you're a nobody and you're dressed like a nobody, then most of the nobles will probably look down on you. In this case, you've affected your disposition negatively. However, if you decide to wear fine clothes, they won't like you more as it's simply expected, but you avoid losing disposition by looking out of place. This is just like the real world. If I walk into a business meeting in a singlet and shorts, you better believe I'm going to be looked down upon. However, who you are still matters here. So if you're, in the case of Skyrim, the prophetic dragonborn and you've saved the world from Alduin, then that will raise your disposition drastically. So if you were to walk through a Jarl's quarters wearing nothing but fur wrapped around your waist, then the nobles will still treat you well because you're a hero. It's the same as how celebrities who are highly loved can walk around wearing ridiculous things, and because people love them so much, it won't matter. It's just their style or their outfit. But if some random on the street walked around in ridiculous fashion, people would obviously roll their eyes and think that person is a bit weird. Same goes for walking into a bar naked or something like that. If you're not wearing clothes in Elder Scrolls 6 and you walk into a venue, I think it would be better if they threatened to call the guards for you acting indecent instead of just awkwardly asking you to cover up your unmentionables. In a nutshell, a dynamically changing context-specific disposition system that affects how people react to you and treat you based on who you are, what you've done, and what they believe would be a really cool immersive feature in the game, and I'd appreciate the attention to detail a lot. And now for desire number 3, the further exploration of Akaviri culture. Personally, we love Akaviri culture and how mysterious it is, and we like it that way. We love Tamriel too much to leave it for an Elder Scrolls set in Akavir. However, we love learning more about it in the games, as we would love the opportunity to explore more Akaviri culture. In the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, there was a whole quest called Lifting the Veil, which requires the hero of Kvatch to retrieve the Draconian Madstone, an ancient Akaviri artifact which can be found in the Pale Pass, an important location in the history of the Akaviri invasion that occurred at the time of Emperor Riemann. In addition, you have the Cloud Ruler Temple with the blades and all their Akaviri-themed armor and weaponry. In Skyrim, we saw Skyhaven Temple and got to experience another hot dose of Akaviri goodness. So what do we want in Elder Scrolls 6? More, of course. For example, imagine you're playing an Elder Scrolls 6 set in Hammerfell, and in one of the port cities you can meet a Redguard trader with a strange companion. Upon closer inspection, you realize this companion is a Tang Mo, the monkey race of Akavir. They have a little backstory about how they met while traveling the far seas, and together they started a business venture, ferrying Akaviri goods to Hammerfell, making plenty of profit thanks to their uniqueness and rarity. You would be able to speak to the Tang Mo and ask about his past, learning about more of the races of Akavir and their current political situation. It'd be nice to have some more concrete confirmation of the information talked about in the book Mysterious Akavir, which happens to be the main source about the races. And from these two, you would be able to buy all kinds of Akaviri weapons, clothing, and armor for highly inflated prices, of course. Perhaps there could be a small series of quests surrounding these two colorful characters, or perhaps we could go on some kind of quest to defeat some shadowy organization, but upon reaching the end of the quest, expecting to find a human or elf behind it all, we instead find a Sisi, a snake race of Akavir, who has been hiding for centuries since the time of Riemann, and had been using a network of thralls to protect and provide for him. We want to see katanas, daikatanas, cool Akaviri aesthetics like the motifs in Elder Scrolls Online. If I want to roleplay an Akaviri weeaboo, I want to be able to get some cool weeaboo gear. Regardless, the point we are trying to get across is that we want a more tangible exploration of the Akaviri culture without having to move all the way to Akavir. Tamriel has so much unexplored, undiscovered, and unresolved that it would be a shame to leave it. But give us something like the example I gave, something that confirms more about Akavir. Just give us a little bit, enough to be satisfied, without removing us entirely from Tamriel to do so. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my fourth desire is definitely an interesting one. In Elder Scrolls 6 mainly, if High Rock was either the main province or an included province you could visit, I would definitely want to see some sort of option to build your own home, and eventually, even a castle. Anyways, what I want to do now is hold hands, tread carefully, and repeat after me. We do not want Elder Scrolls 6 to have a settlement building or crafting emphasis. I repeat, we do not want Elder Scrolls 6 to have a settlement building or crafting emphasis. In Fallout 4, settlement building was fun for many people, but Bethesda made it far too important, and as a result missed out on making their map and world a lot deeper. Instead of making all these crazy cool settlements to discover yourself filled with unique characters and fun side quests, all the settlements were almost like a canvas for you to take over and just build upon them yourself. This is one of the reasons there weren't enough side quests in the game, and just generally speaking, while it's fun, building is not what I would want the main focus to be in a Fallout game, and definitely not in an Elder Scrolls game. So let's leave that to Minecraft. However, obviously being able to build your own estate can be done in Elder Scrolls, and it was done in Skyrim with the Hearthfire DLC. With this, you could buy and customize your own house, and there were set locations in which it could be set up. It didn't detract from the main game in the slightest, and it was this neat little thing out of the way. In Elder Scrolls 6, I would want to see this return, and in the same way, it needs to be executed with the rule that the game is not built primarily to accommodate it. The game should be built as if being able to craft your own player home is just not a big deal. Just build Elder Scrolls 6 as it would be, a deep, fleshed out single-player open-world RPG with all the good stuff we want, and then, with the map and world built as if building isn't too important, let us build on that. The reason I feel so strongly about this is because I don't actually trust Bethesda not to do what they did with Fallout and make building a main focus. I do not want Elder Scrolls 6 to be some rebuild a war-torn province with your own knightly faction and take over High Rock for yourself kind of thing. It would be fun, but it would come at the expense of what actually makes an Elder Scrolls game good. However, there is an old Breton proverb which states, "Find a new hill, become a king," and many Bretons have been struck with a quest obsession that leads them in pursuit of completing noble deeds to increase their status and influence. For High Rock society, such an attitude is quite useful, as it leads to many people being helped, even if the helper is in it for their own glory. Now this is a big topic, so we can probably make an entire video dedicated to it, so stay tuned for that, but let me explain a summary of ideas. Again, I won't be able to explain the execution perfectly in the time frame of this video, and I think it's important that I spent time on explaining what I don't want. But for what we do want, I think you shouldn't be restricted to 2 or 3 places in the game, so you should be able to build anywhere, but I say that with finger quotes, because obviously there's going to be restrictions on where you can build. For example, you can't just build next to a city or town or pre-existing structure. Have it like Fallout 76, where the feeling is that you can build anywhere, but obviously you need to be in some sort of zone with plenty of your own space. Now remember, I asked for the design of the world to be as if building doesn't exist, so this won't actually jeopardize the world in any way. I don't want a Bethesda designer to think, oh, we should just leave this big blank area here in case someone wants to build here. No, let us figure it out for ourselves. Just imagine if you were in Whiterun and you could choose to build out in the plains somewhere, so long as it wasn't right next to other locations and the terrain was suitable for it. Now the other thing would be this. You can only set up one zone to build at any given time. Now obviously I want Elder Scrolls 6 to be nothing like Fallout 76 at its core, but the camp system used in Fallout 76, where you can only build around your camp device and it can only be in one place at once, is fitting for this Elder Scrolls idea. Obviously without some sort of mechanical camp device, I just mean you can only focus on building in one zone at any given time. Secondly, have what you can build be restricted by your fame or reputation in a certain area. So if it was in High Rock, you'd have to be on really good terms with a kingdom to be able to build a castle. So imagine you can build a low-tier shack-like structure in any kingdom's hold or territory, so long as it's out of the way of other settlements and locations. But if you want to build an actual house, you'll need to have more of a reputation with the kingdom the land belongs to. This ties in with the reputation system we wanted, mentioned in a previous video of this series. So basically the only way you can build something as grand as a castle, which is pretty much a fort-like structure, is if you're more or less in bed with the king. If it was in Skyrim, for example, you'd have to be the Thane of Windhelm and be Ulfric's most trusted contact by helping him take over Solitude, before you could build a castle-like building within the Windhelm hold. Now with building, I do think a drag and drop system would work better than one like Hearthfire, where you couldn't even see what you were building until it was done, but at the same time, I don't want it to be like Fallout 4, where you literally just build each each little bit of fence, wall, and roof. The structures you can build would be a lot more pre-made than Fallout 4, in the same way they were in Hearthfire, but obviously add in more options and let us see what we're actually going to build before we build it and where we're putting it. For example, Regal Hallway Type 1, Mage Tower Door Entrance Type 3, Ornate Roof Type 2, Living Room Type 5, and Alchemist Quarters 4. You get the idea. Then because we don't want the game to have a crafting focus or resource management focus, simply because that's not what Elder Scrolls is about, I think the main way you get these things built is through money. So similarly to Hearthfire, you just have to buy the resources needed for each piece you're adding to your design, or perhaps you could even hire people as cheap labor to go gather your resources for a lower cost, but it makes the building process take longer. Or if you really want, you can sit there chopping your own wood and mining your own clay and ore, but I think this method should be borderline impractical. The last thing we want in Elder Scrolls 6 is a scrapathon. Overall, having your own buildable structures enhances role-playing by letting you feel like whatever character you want. If you want to be some scummy bandit setting up a little tent or shack in the wilderness as a hideout, you can do that. If you want to feel like a noble and you are one, well, you can have a grand-looking house in your favorite kingdom. Or if you're really respected and almost a king, you can have a castle. And again, you'd be prevented from creating overly tall or stupid structures simply because you'd be blending together a bunch of really well-crafted, pre-made assets instead of just building your own walls as high as you want, like in Minecraft. I think doing this keeps it lore-friendly and fits with the idea of having the map crafted as if players aren't going to be building crap all over it, because that's not the point of Elder Scrolls, and you wouldn't be able to anyway if this was designed how I envision. So there's way more freedom as to where you can craft and what you can craft than there ever would have been in the Elder Scrolls series, but what you can craft is limited by reputation, which makes sense for role-playing if you're building in a certain king's territory, and obviously funding would be the other factor. As a concluding thought, I think even if your reputation is poor, there should be a way to build better structures than normally would be permitted through bribery, as we want to accommodate for criminal character builds. But at the same time, perhaps you can bribe your way to a nice estate, but you're going to need to have been a true help to the kingdom if you want anything like a castle. It goes without saying that this same execution of buildable homes concept could be pulled off in Hammerfell too, but I just think it suits the more politically divided lands of High Rock, where reputation can be as valuable as gold. Next up, we have a topic inspired by Red Dead Redemption 2, and that is immersive features. Now, we are in no way suggesting Elder Scrolls 6 has the looting system of Red Dead or anything like that where you have to mundanely bend down to open every chest with an extended animation. None of that. We would want Elder Scrolls 6 to play much like the previous games. However, there are a lot of features in Red Dead 2 that improve immersion hugely. A very simple one is the visual effects on your character. In Red Dead 2, when you get slashed, mauled, or shot, blood appears smeared across your clothing, and when you toss and tumble in the mud and dirt, you get a dirty face, and when you enter the water or take a bath, you're clean again. Imagine your character starts off the Battle of Whiterun in shining Imperial armor like our Imperial Centurion build. You start off all clean and fresh, but then you enter this long and hardy battle, and by the end of it, you are caked in blood and mud, which you can then go wash off. Your face may not even be muddy if you had a full face helm on, but otherwise you're caked in mud and blood. It would be such an awesome immersive role-playing element. You would really feel like and visually look like you have just been in an intense battle. When you go wash off afterwards and you're chilling in Breeze Home, you can really feel the relief and rested feeling. But then say you're in the same battle, but you're a mage with alteration shield spells equipped. You could roleplay a fancy mage woman in a robe or dress who comes out of the battle feeling fresh as a daisy because not only did the flesh spell protect her from the damage, but also the mud and blood accumulating. These are just nice little immersive details that I think really improve the game. It would also tie in very nicely to the Disposition system that we talked about before. If you've been out in the wilderness for days on end, fighting creatures and doing it hard, sleeping in bushes, you may be filthy. Then if you walk your filthy feet into the noble court looking like some hooligan, then this would negatively affect your standing, even if temporarily. But if you were to come back after a quick wash in the lake, you would be treated better. The role-playing it gives you is huge. Imagine if you wanted to be some smelly beggar that worships Namira, refusing to ever bathe, or if you want to play a character who is almost OCD about cleanliness. Another awesome example of immersion that Red Dead 2 had, and The Witcher 3 before it, is beard growth and hair growth in Red Dead 2. In Red Dead 2 you can cut your hair into multiple different styles, and same with your beard, but your hair would still continue to grow unless you get a trim. And it isn't at an incredibly fast pace or anything, so it doesn't feel annoying. Imagine if Elder Scrolls 6 had something similar. Imagine you're playing some kind of clean-shaven soldier who has come fresh off the boat to Hammerfell, and then you get wrapped up in quest after quest, lost in the desert, running through the mountains, and by the end of it you have grown out a beard and long hair. Maybe then you've cut your hair into a certain style and keep the beard or braid the beard or whatever. An interesting thing I noticed, and reason I would want a feature like this in Elder Scrolls 6, is how it connects it to your experiences. For example, in Red Dead 2 I started off with a Raggedy Man look, off in the wilds, growing long hair and a beard, but eventually I got to a big civilization town and I bought some fancy clothes, got a nice short fade, and a clean-shaven face. It cemented this moving up in the world feeling for me. I've attached that experience to a certain look. Like in real life, when you hear the whole, hey, remember when you had that haircut thing? When you used to have long hair, or you had a mohawk in high school, or whatever. It gives you an aesthetic history. Everyone gets excited because, wow, Captain America has a beard now. Aesthetic change often helps reflect actual character development. In that same playthrough of Red Dead 2, after I was all clean shaven and tidy, I got thrown into a scenario where I wasn't able to get into town and I had to start living it rough again. The fade grew out and a beard started forming again. I'd even thrown some pelt-looking coats and stuff over my old fancy waistcoat. I now looked like an outlaw that had fallen from affluence. It was a cool role-playing element, and I'd love to see a similar thing in Elder Scrolls 6. Perhaps you join an assassin's organization where it is customary to be hairless, hair and beard gone, at least for novices. Perhaps it represents your rebirth into the guild or something. There is a lot of aesthetic immersion that really helps facilitate role-playing and help tell a personal story. Perhaps they could do the same thing with tattoos and scars. Imagine being a fresh-off-the-boat Nord, clean-shaven with medium-length hair, but then over time you grew your long hair out and braided it and grew a beard. But then by the actual endgame you've shaven your head bald, grew out a braided beard, and even tattooed your bald head, looking like some scary Ragnar Lothbrok-like Viking. All of these little immersive details help create personal stories and character development, so that's why we want to see it in Elder Scrolls 6. And that, ladies and gentlemen, of Tamriel and Beyond wraps up our latest episode of 5 Things We Want in Elder Scrolls 6. What did you think of it? Do you like these ideas? Would you do anything differently? What ideas would you like me to talk about in Part 8? That is, if you can threaten us enough to make us produce a Part 8. As always, thanks so much for watching the whole video and supporting the channel. If you're still listening to this, I'd love to see you comment that you did indeed listen this far, because it really goes to show us how much you enjoy what we love to create. This is our passion. Thanks for sharing it with us and for supporting the channel. My name is Scott, social media links in the description, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very, very soon.